You wake up, not to an alarm, but to anxiety. 5 a.m. Your screen glows, 3 notifications. An Uber order, a DoorDash order, a TaskRabbit order. You're already in debt. For insurance, for gas. For this very night you sold just to avoid eviction. You sneeze. Your throat is dry. Your chest tightens. But you can't stop. Because stopping means $0. $0 means the end. You're not lazy. You're not stupid. You're just caught in a trap disguised as freedom. They told you you're your own boss. But a boss isn't afraid to sneeze. A boss doesn't calculate every mile for gas. A boss doesn't wake up in a cold sweat thinking, what if there are no orders today? This isn't work. It's real-time survival. An algorithm decides who gets an order. An algorithm decides who gets a rating reduction. An algorithm decides who gets deactivated, without explanation, without appeal, without a face. The boss has become code, and code doesn't listen. Imagine, you're not alone. 55 million others just like you. 68% with no savings, not even for a week. One cold, and you're on the street. Because sick leave? Non-existent. Vacation? A joke. Retirement? A fairy tale for others. In California, platforms spent $200 million to legalize this. Proposition 22. Not a law, not protection, a contract for no rights. And now, all of America is copying this model. Flexibility without guarantees, freedom without support, entrepreneurship without capital. Do you feel it? In your throat, in your shoulders, in your fingers, trembling from coffee and exhaustion. This isn't work fatigue. It's the fatigue of constant risk. Being a consumable in a system that calls you a partner. But here's the paradox. The more you work, the more dependent you become. On the app, on the rating, on the next order. True freedom isn't about working whenever you want. It's about having the right to say no, and not dying from it. And you don't have that right. And this isn't a bug, it's a feature. Just 3 years ago, he stood at the blackboard, chalk dust on his fingers, laughter in the hallway, a schedule set for the entire year. Mr. Carter, a teacher. Now he sits in the corner of his kitchen, turns on Zoom, and whispers formulas to teenagers who don't even know his name. Working more, earning less, no insurance, no contract, no tomorrow either. Yesterday he taught. Today he disappears. Do you feel it? When instead of an alarm clock, there's a notification. Client canceled. When instead of a paycheck, there are numbers that melt faster than ice in a glass. When instead of colleagues, there's an empty support chat. Let's go back 100 years. A factory, a whistle, a shift, a union. When they strike, they are alive. When they demand, they exist. The government listens. Laws are born in sweat and shouts. And now you're alone. In a car, on a bike, at a laptop at 3 a.m. The platform doesn't pay, it provides an opportunity. It doesn't fire, it deactivates. It doesn't exploit, it inspires freedom. This isn't progress, it's repackaging. Old exploitation in new wrapping. The factory became an app. The workshop, an algorithm. And you, not a worker. You're an independent contractor. Heard that word? Sounds like freedom. In reality, it's a sentence. Imagine you're driving to an order. Polite, punctual, clean car. And then, silence. Notifications stop coming. You restart. Check the internet. Write to support. Silence. A week later, you realize you're gone. Not fired, not warned, just erased. The algorithm is silent. You disappear. Is this being fired? No, it's a ban. And it doesn't happen out of human malice, but by the logic of code that doesn't see you as human. Only a rating, only efficiency, only expenses. Platforms deliberately avoid the word employee. They know, once they admit it, they'd have to pay sick leave, vacation, taxes. But this way, you're your own boss, your own insurance, your own grave if you get sick. The Dynamex case? Courts already understood. This isn't a mistake. It's a strategy, a conscious abdication of responsibility, a legal architecture built on one principle: you are not ours. And do you still believe this is freedom? Freedom is when you can stop, when you can say no, when you can get sick and not die from it. You are not a partner. You are a resource, temporary, replaceable, invisible. And while you chase the next order, the system celebrates. You work, and it doesn't pay. You risk, and it's safe. You live in real time, and it builds its future on your fear. Gone. She paints pictures galleries dream of buying. But at night, her fingers smell of onions and soy sauce. She delivers sushi. She has no days off. Vacation? That's a dream for those who aren't afraid that rent will devour everything left after tips. They call her an entrepreneur, a one-person business. But a real business doesn't tremble at every canceled order. A real business doesn't disappear if an algorithm decides you're not efficient enough. Do you feel it? When instead of paints, there are gloves, instead of inspiration, a route built by an app. It all starts with 3 words, independent contractor. Sounds like freedom. In reality, it's a trap. The 1938 labor protection law guaranteed minimum wage, overtime, protection from unfair dismissal. But if you're a contractor, that law doesn't see you. Platforms don't pay for sick leave, don't provide insurance, don't take responsibility if you fall off your bike in the rain, and it's all legal. Because hundreds of lawyers have spent years polishing contracts, turning people into solitary individuals without rights. In California, Uber and Lyft spent $200 million to enshrine this in law with Proposition 22. Not protection, not a compromise. A contract for absence. More than 55 million Americans are in the gig economy, 1 in 3, and 68% of them can't live without income for even a week. One cold, one brake failure, one day without orders, and you're on the edge. This isn't poverty, this is vulnerability. And it's worse, because poverty is a status, and vulnerability is constant fear. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the proportion of those who don't receive employer-sponsored insurance has increased by 22% since 2015, almost entirely due to gig work. You are not poor. You are vulnerable. And it's not your fault. It's a calculation. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. Without rights, no stability. Without stability, no future. And when you can't afford a week without money, you stop thinking about dreams. You only think about the next order. About whether you'll have enough for gas, about whether your rating will drop. Dry mouth, insomnia, triple-checking tips, not out of greed but out of fear. Imagine your fingers hold a brush, but instead of paints it's a steering wheel, instead of silence the chime of notifications. You create, but not for the world. You work, but not for yourself. And they call all this freedom. Gone. He counts every cent, not out of greed, out of necessity. In the morning, gas. In the afternoon, insurance. In the evening, rent. He's been working for Uber since 2019. He has a good rating, a clean car, a polite smile. But when he caught a cold last winter, he couldn't afford to stay home. The choice was simple, either work with a fever or not pay rent. He chose to work, and coughed all week, driving passengers around Austin. Because in his world, there's no sick leave. There's only an app that doesn't ask if you're healthy. It asks, are you ready to work? His palms sweat not from the heat but from anxiety. Every time a new order appears on the screen, he mentally calculates if those $12.50 will cover gas and insurance. Do you feel it? When the numbers in the app aren't income, but a long-term loan of trust to yourself. Many people think gig workers earn well, especially if they have a car and a smartphone. But the reality is different. After deducting expenses for fuel, car wear and tear, insurance, taxes, the average income of an Uber driver is 37% lower than that of an hourly retail worker. Why? Because platforms shift all risks onto the worker. You don't get a salary, you get opportunities. And each one requires investment from you. Your income is an illusion. The real profit stays with those who own the platform. Economic Policy Institute studies confirm, after all deductions, many drivers earn less than $9 an hour, below the federal minimum wage. Imagine that it's you. You're driving. Gas is on empty. A $3 order, an 8-mile journey. The brakes squeal like a warning. But you take it, because rent is due tomorrow, and yesterday you already skipped dinner. This is where it gets interesting. 1 in 12 Uber drivers in the U.S. has filed for bankruptcy. Not 1 in 100, not 1 in 1,000, 1 in 12. This isn't an anomaly. It's the system. People take out loans for cars to start working, pay for insurance to stay in the game, and all this in conditions where income is unpredictable and expenses are constant. Bankruptcy isn't a failure. It's the logical conclusion of a model where the worker bears all risks and the platform reaps all benefits. Statistics from 2022 to 2024 show a sharp increase in such cases. In Texas, Florida, and California, the number of bankruptcies among gig workers has risen by 41% in 2 years. Financial instability erodes not only the wallet, but also the psyche. When every day is a struggle for survival, you stop sleeping peacefully. You stop planning. You stop believing that tomorrow can be better. And this anxiety isn't a personal weakness. It's the norm of the new working life. It manifests in ringing in your ears, in a racing pulse with every notification, in how you jump when you hear the low battery signal because without your phone, you're invisible to the system. Look here. Your income isn't what the app shows. Your income is what's left after the platform, gas, insurance, and the bank have taken their share. And often, that's zero. Gone. Mr. Carter sits in front of the screen again. 3 lessons today. Tomorrow, maybe none. His fingers glide across the banking app. Balance, $142. Then, the insurance expiration date. In 4 days. He's not thinking about medicine. He's thinking about the bill. Because if his temperature spikes, he'll have to choose pharmacy or food. His palms aren't trembling from fatigue. They're trembling from the emptiness beneath his feet. One bad review, one network glitch, one day without orders, and the whole structure collapses. He's not afraid of illness. He's afraid that illness will make him invisible. Do you feel it? How the ringing in your ears from a notification becomes the background noise of life. Chronic stress isn't a side effect. It's the fuel of the system. When you don't know if you'll have income tomorrow, when every morning starts with 3 apps, when vacation is a fantasy, not a right. Your brain lives in a state of war. Cortisol in your blood, like a soldier in a combat zone. Rapid heartbeat, tunnel vision, hyperfocus on the nearest threat, an empty gas tank, expired insurance, a red battery indicator. This isn't weakness. It's the physiology of survival. Your body doesn't understand that the threat isn't a wolf at the door, but an algorithm that can erase you without a word. Imagine that it's you. You can't plan a wedding. You can't decide whether to have a child. You can't even buy an annual gym membership. Why? Because you have no future. Not in terms of dreams, in terms of numbers. You don't know how much you'll earn next month. And without that, no plans. Only today. And today is the edge. 74% of gig workers postponed doctor's visits. 61% canceled personal plans. Not out of laziness. Out of calculation. You are not weak. You are being kept in a state of survival. And this is where it gets interesting. When the future disappears, an illusion kicks in. You are an entrepreneur. This phrase echoes in the app, in advertisements, in CEO interviews. It comforts. It gives a false sense of control. But an entrepreneur builds their own, and you build their profit, and you pay for it with your own health, sleep, and right to a tomorrow. Look here. Your flexibility is their stability. Your risk is their profit. Your anxiety is their business model. Gone. In Los Angeles, Maria turns on the light. Not in a studio, in an app. Her office is the backseat of her car. Her client base is a ghost in the algorithm. Her brand is a filtered avatar. She files her Schedule C, like a real business. But a real business doesn't tremble at every review. A real business isn't afraid to click decline order. But Maria is afraid. Because declining means a lower rating. A lower rating means fewer orders. Fewer orders means an empty fridge. Do you feel it? When your business depends on a button you can't push, they called you a CEO. But a CEO doesn't ask for tips. A CEO doesn't count miles to the nearest order. A CEO isn't afraid of being erased from the search tomorrow, without warning, without reason, without a face. You are not a CEO. You are a tenant of your own life, and you pay for it not with money, but with time, sleep, and the right to make mistakes. Imagine that it's you. You raise your price by 15%. Clients disappear. You ask for an advance. Your rating drops. You take a day off. The algorithm redirects your orders to those who don't sleep. So much for entrepreneurship. And this is where it gets interesting. You're a business? Then tell me, who owns your market? Not your Instagram, not your Behance, not your Schedule C. Your market is inside the app, and the app isn't yours. The platform decides how much you'll earn. The platform decides who you'll be shown to. The platform decides if you exist at all. And you don't own clients. You don't own data. You don't even own your name, because outside of Fiverr, Uber, or TaskRabbit, you're nobody. Your reputation is a number in someone else's database. Your success is a temporary algorithm error. Who is the real business here? The one sitting in Sunnyvale taking 30% of your every sweat. The one who hired Littler Mendelsohn to turn labor into service. The one who made the 1938 law a museum exhibit. You are not an entrepreneur. You are a facade, a pretty label on an old bottle of exploitation. And the hardest part, the more you believe this fairy tale, the quieter you remain. Who will demand sick leave if they consider themselves a CEO? Who will join a union if they think they have their own firm? Without ownership, no power. Without power, no voice. And without a voice, you are invisible, even to democracy. Because when 68% live in next order mode, there's no one to knock on doors, no one to demand, no one to remember. Freedom isn't a flexible schedule. Freedom is the right to stop. And you don't have it. You are not a business. You are a resource wrapped in a dream. Gone. At 3 a.m., Jason in Austin taps end trip, his 8th of the day. The brakes squeal, not the car, but his nerves. If he stops, he won't pay insurance. If he doesn't pay, the algorithm will erase him. At the same time, Mark in Chicago looks at his screen. 2 lessons, $28. Tomorrow there might be nothing. The algorithm isn't obliged to explain. In Los Angeles, Maria sees her rating has dropped to 4.6. Why? Unknown. Support is silent. All 3 want to scream. But who has the strength? Who has the time? Collective action is a luxury. Do you feel it? How fatigue kills even the thought of resistance. Platforms don't just pay less, they break the connection between people. The Federal Trade Commission confirms fragmentation is a conscious strategy. No common place, no common schedule, no common we. Only you and the screen, only you and fear, only you and your avatar in someone else's system. Unions grew in factories, where people shared bread, sweat, anger. And where do you gather? In a chat where it's forbidden to write "they pay poorly," where every word is scanned by a bot. Imagine that it's you. You want to talk to others, but your office is the back seat. Your colleagues are ghosts in the rating. Your cafeteria is McDonald's at 2 a.m., and as long as you're alone, the system is safe, because strength is in contact, and contact is in risk, and risk is in an empty wallet. Economic Policy Institute studies show cortisol levels in gig workers are like those of soldiers after combat. A brain in survival mode doesn't think about rights. It thinks, will there be enough for gas? In 2020, Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash spent $200 million on Proposition 22. That's more than the budget of Omaha. They flooded the airwaves, preserved flexibility, and people believed. Because flexibility is here, and sick leave is somewhere in the future, a future they don't have. But it was a trap. Flexibility without support isn't freedom. It's a tightrope over an abyss, and you're walking it barefoot. Look here, your voice didn't upload because you don't have a budget. The system doesn't just strip you of stability. It makes you invisible to politics, to law, to history. They call you independent. But independence without resources is a prison with open doors. You can leave, but there's nowhere to go. You don't stay silent out of weakness. You stay silent because you've been silenced. And it's time to ask, whose voice matters? The one who creates value, or the one who takes 30% and decides if you exist tomorrow? Gone. 2019. Sacramento. For the first time in a generation, Legislators looked platforms in the eye and said, "Enough. AB5, not just letters. It was a shield. Based on the Dynamex case, it restored worker status, minimum wage, gas reimbursement, sick leave, protection from sudden disappearance." Drivers hugged in the square. Delivery people whispered, "Now I can take my child to the doctor." It wasn't a dream. It was a foundation. Human. Necessary. And the system didn't flinch. It responded. $200 million. Prop 22. Not an amendment. Not a compromise. A legal virus. Corporate lawyers from Gibson Dunn built in a trap. Minimum $15.60 per hour. Sounds like protection, but only for active time. Not for the drive to the client, not for sitting in traffic, not for a blank screen waiting for an order. Health insurance? No. Vacation? No. The right to organize? Absolutely not. It wasn't a law. It was a theatrical performance. And the audience believed. 58% voted for flexibility, for the right to work at 3 a.m., for the illusion of choice. You didn't vote against yourself. You were convinced. Imagine, 200 million. That's more than the budget of 40% of California cities. This money bought fear. Fear of losing the freedom to rot in a car. Fear of being without an avatar in the app. Ads screamed, "Preserve flexibility." And in the silence, the numbers, 1 in 12 Uber drivers files for bankruptcy. And all this? Not in secret. Not in the shadows, but in plain sight. In a referendum. Because democracy is also a platform. And if you don't have a budget, your voice won't upload. It will freeze in the buffer. Forever. Look here. Your yes is their code. Your hope is their marketing. Your vulnerability is their business plan. AB5 was a glimmer, a reminder an alternative is possible. Prop 22, a reminder, in this system, justice doesn't win on its own. It must be snatched. But how do you fight someone who says you are free and makes you believe it until you get sick? Freedom without guarantees isn't freedom. It's vulnerability wrapped in positive thinking. Gone. All of this, it's not an accident. It's a machine. Clear, cold, self-replicating. The algorithm decides you or not. Lawyers polish contracts. You are not an employee. Finances hold you in a vice. 68% won't last a week without orders. Stress grinds your brain. Cortisol, like a soldier in a trench. And advertising whispers, you are an entrepreneur. And you remain silent. Because how can you demand sick leave if you're the CEO of your own loneliness? Politics looks away. You're not in the statistics, not in the halls, not in the votes. This isn't a bug. It's logic. A market where people are expendable and profit is sacred. Freedom without guarantees. This isn't the future. It's a return to the past. Before unions, before laws, before human dignity. Jason is still driving. In Austin, 3:40 a.m. He's not looking at the clock. He's looking at the gas, at the insurance, at the lease expiration date. His flexibility is the inability to stop, even when his throat is raw from coughing. His freedom is a choice between food and medicine. His smile in the app, a mask. Beneath it, dry mouth, trembling knees, emptiness in his chest. He's not lazy. He hasn't lost. He's a cog in a system that demands movement but provides no fuel, no right to fall, no right to even disappear gracefully. And as long as we call this the new economy, we forget an economy should feed, not devour, especially when it concerns 55 million, 1 in 3. Freedom without security is a trap, packaged in a slogan, backed by a Schedule C form. True freedom isn't about working at 3 a.m. It's about knowing if you get sick, you won't be out. If a child is born, you can hold them longer than during a break between orders. If you fall, you'll be picked up, not erased from the search, without a word, without a face. Freedom is certainty, not anxiety disguised as choice. And the louder it's sold, in referendums, in podcasts, in ads with smiling drivers, the quieter the truth becomes. Because an illusion is louder than a scream. Now, it's your turn. Do you believe flexibility is freedom? Or is it a trap, disguised as autonomy? Write in the comments, freedom or trap, because until we call it out, the system will feed on our fear. But as soon as we speak the truth, it will begin to crack. And this time, for real. Do you feel it? How your fingers grip the steering wheel not from the road, but from powerlessness. Imagine that it's you, and choose a word. Gone.